The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, stunned travelers, airlines, and local leaders in El Paso, Texas, this week by issuing an abrupt temporary flight restriction over El Paso International Airport, then lifting it only hours later. The incident, which briefly halted nearly all aircraft operations into and out of the airport, highlighted serious concerns about interagency coordination, airspace safety, and responses to perceived security threats. Unprecedented ground stop. Late on Tuesday night, February 10, 2026, the FAA issued a notice to airmen, NOTAM, that grounded all flights to and from El Paso International Airport and nearby Santa Teresa, New Mexico, for what it described only as special security reasons. Under the order, all commercial, cargo, and general aviation flights within about a 10 nautical mile radius up to 17,999 feet were prohibited from flying. The prohibition was sweeping. Pilots flying in the restricted area were warned that they could face detention, loss of certificate, or even deadly force if deemed to pose a security threat, language typically reserved for serious national defense actions and not standard airport operations. The NOTAM went into effect around 11:30 p.m. MST on Tuesday and was initially written to last until 11:30 p.m. on February 20th. Confusion and disruption. The sudden order caught many by surprise. Airlines, travelers, and even local officials said they had little to no advance warning about the closure. El Paso International Airport issued a travel advisory urging passengers to contact their airlines for updates as flights were canceled or rerouted. The closure affected people throughout the region, a border metropolitan area of nearly 700,000 residents that also serves parts of southern New Mexico and northern Mexico. El Paso Airport normally handles millions of passengers annually and serves as a vital hub for commercial and cargo traffic. During the brief closure, a handful of flights were canceled and some medevac or medical transfer flights were temporarily rerouted. What prompted the restriction? Officials offered differing explanations for the order. Cartel drone incursion and military action. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and other administration sources later stated that the restriction was triggered by a suspected Mexican cartel drone incursion into U.S. airspace near the border. They said the FAA and the Department of Defense acted to address the threat and that the situation had been neutralized. Additional reporting indicated that U.S. Customs and Border Protection, with Pentagon authorization, had been using anti-drone laser technology near Fort Bliss, the sprawling Army post adjacent to El Paso. That deployment, and the potential risk it posed to civilian flights, is believed to have spurred the FAA's decision to impose the restriction. However, there were conflicting details about the underlying object that prompted the response. Some accounts suggested what was initially thought to be cartel drones may have been a benign balloon, raising questions about the clarity of the threat assessment. Interagency communication breakdown. Other reporting suggested the closure may have stemmed from communication failures between federal agencies, particularly the FAA, Pentagon, and Department of Homeland Security. A lack of timely information about military or counter-drone operations in civilian airspace reportedly prompted the FAA to act out of caution. Rapid reversal and resumption of flights. Despite the original 10-day timeframe, the FAA reversed course early Wednesday morning, February 11th, lifting the airspace closure after only several hours. In a social media post, the agency said that there is no threat to commercial aviation and that normal flight operations would resume. Airlines quickly began restoring scheduled departures and arrivals. Travelers stranded by the temporary shutdown were able to resume their journeys later in the day. Local and political reaction. Local leaders in El Paso criticized the sudden decision as poorly communicated and disruptive, especially for an airport and community that rely on dependable air service for business, healthcare, and cross-border travel. Officials argued that such an impactful decision could not be made without better coordination with city authorities, airport management, and emergency services, remarking that the scale of the closure was reminiscent of measures last seen after the 9/11 attacks. Members of Congress from both parties have called for more transparency about what prompted the airspace shutdown and why it was issued without warning. Wider implications. The El Paso incident underscores the challenges of managing U.S. airspace when emerging security concerns, such as drone incursions, intersect with civilian aviation safety. It also highlights persistent issues around interagency communication, particularly when military and civil aviation authorities operate in close geographic proximity. While the FAA's reversal helped avert prolonged travel disruptions, questions remain about how such decisions are made and communicated and whether future threats will prompt similar action.